Hello and welcome to our weekly Bible study. We've got some sunshine shining in, and video might look a little funny, but I'm going to embrace the sunshine here today on this March day. We're continuing our study here in the book of 1 John. Today we're looking at 1 John chapter 3, verses 1 through 3. Let me just read through those, and the subject here today is the children of God. Verse 1 says, "Behold, what manner of love the Father hath bestowed upon us, that we should be called the sons of God. Therefore the world knoweth us not, because it knew him not. Beloved, now are we the sons of God, and it doth not yet appear what we shall be, but we know that when he shall appear, we shall be like him, for we shall see him as he is. And every man that hath this hope in him purifieth himself, even as he is pure." All right, think about what John is saying here. He starts off this chapter with behold, right? Look, behold, look at the love of God. Look at what it's like, right? God's love is amazing. And so John says, behold the love of God the Father. So let's spend just a few minutes talking about what it's like and why it's so amazing. Here in these few short verses, John describes the Father's love, first of all, as a transformative gift, right? This love that God bestows upon us, it transforms us into the children of God. So the love of God, yes, it saves us from sin. Jesus died to be the propitiation for the sins of the whole world. But this love also is transforming us. We are now called God's children. God's love moves us from being alienated from God to then now being it moves us from being alienated from God and enemies of God to now being called his children. According to Romans 5:8, it says that God demonstrates his love toward us in that while we were yet sinners, Christ died for us. It says in verse number 10, "For if when we were enemies, we were reconciled to God by the death of his Son." So God's love transforms us from being enemies and aliens to now being reconciled to him and being called his children. We're moved from darkness to light. We're changed from being enemies to being ambassadors. According to 1 Peter 2:9, we are a chosen generation, a royal priesthood, a holy nation, a peculiar people, that we should show forth the praises of him who have called us out of darkness into his marvelous light. God loves us. He not only forgives our sin, but he makes us into his children and gives us this wonderful work of being his representatives, his ambassadors. So that moves us into this not only being a transformative gift, but it's a gift of distinction, right? So in this process here where he saves us, he then is conforming us to the image of Christ. So we are his children, but then he's also making us more and more like Jesus. Romans 8:29 talks about being conformed to the image of his Son. So man, no wonder John calls us to marvel at God's love. God loves us so much that he's making us like him. He's perfecting us, right? Peter talks about, the participation in the divine nature, right? Wow, what an amazing love that God gives us. Of course, this love comes with its challenges. John's going to call us to purification, and he says here in the first few verses that we read that the world doesn't know us because it didn't know God. So the more he transforms us to be like him, this is a distinction, right? This gift here. The world rejects God, and the more we are like him, the more distinct we are from the world, and the more the world rejects us, right? In Matthew 5, in his Sermon on the Mount, Jesus talked about how persecution is going to come, rejection is going to come for his sake, right? And so this is a gift that transforms us and makes us distinct from this world, from the world system, right? And the world system reacts negatively against us. But I wonder, that calling in verse number 3, will we embrace this distinction, right? Will we be willing to be different because we are like Jesus? So that then brings us here. John is calling us to a response, right? If God's love transforms us into his children, what's the child's response, right, to this amazing love that John says, look at it, behold it, marvel at it, right? Well, first of all, we should be enjoying and expecting this transformation, right? John talks about the hope of heaven in verse number 2, right? We don't see a full view of what God's doing in our lives, but one day we'll have the full view. One day this transformation will be complete. We'll have glorified bodies. We'll be in heaven. No more tears. All those things will be wiped away. What an amazing, fullness of this transformation, right? So this transformation is happening right now, but it's going to continue later in eternity. And I wonder, are we enjoying and expecting, are we enjoying and participating in God's work in our life right now, right? Do we embrace how he's changing us now to make us more like Jesus? That should be thrilling, but then we should live a life of expectation for how God will continue to grow us in heaven, right? Let's not waste this life. Let's think about the hope of heaven and think about how God's working in us now and will continue that work, right? Heaven's just going to be another step in that same direction, full step, right? But just an amazing continuation of what God is doing here. And so what a joy to know that we'll continue to be conformed to the image of Jesus throughout eternity. And that's what some theologians have called an ever-expanding happiness, right? So no wonder John says, marvel at the love of God, this amazing thing. But then John gives us something to do, right? Not just to think about this, but actually then to seek purification, right? He ends verse number 3 with saying that everybody that has this hope should purify himself even as Jesus is pure. So we should seek purification. Again, back to the meantime, according to verse 3, we should work on purifying ourselves. Now, John shows this encouragement. We are God's children. We don't have to make ourselves his children. He is changing us. He is active in our lives. We have this wonderful hope of heaven that can't be taken away from us. But at the same time, John is pushing us and encouraging us to seek to purify ourselves while we wait for Jesus' return. God is transforming us with his love. He is purifying us as his children. But will we seek to purify ourselves along with his work? Now, again, what does John mean by purifying ourselves? He gives us the standard in verse 3. The standard is to be pure as Jesus is pure. And so the big question here in response to marveling at God's love is, how can we be more like Jesus today? Well, check out the description and look at those discussion questions to keep thinking about this idea of purification, purifying ourselves. But what a wonderful love God has demonstrated towards us. And we should embrace that, behold it, marvel at it, and participate fully with God's work in our lives. Well, God bless you. We'll see you next time as we continue in 1 John.